Hello, good evening. Welcome to Camnet Television Main News. My name is Jeffrey Ziambo. Our top stories in the news tonight. 8 bodies from Lake BANGWEULE boat accident retrieved. PF risks going into oblivion for opting to resolve internal wrangles through the court. Motorists describe the fuel price reduction as a mockery. In international news, Mozambique faces worst cholera outbreak in over a decade after Cyclone FREDDY. And in sports news, Jesus scores twice as English Premier League leaders Arsenal beat Leeds United.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet Television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet Television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
Hello again, the news in detail. Some motorists in Lusaka have mocked the 93 Ngwe petroleum reduction announced by the Energy Regulations Board, ERB, yesterday. In an interview, some motorists charged that the government should have maintained the same price of petrol, as no difference can be felt from a 93 Ngwe reduction. Yesterday, ERB reduced the price of diesel by 2.97 Ngwe, while the price of petrol was reduced by 0.9 by 93 Ngwe. More in this report.
The Russian-Ukraine conflict has made running a vehicle in Zambia an increasingly expensive affair. Fuel price in the country now retails at a cost above 26 kwacha per litre. Yesterday, the Energy Regulation Board announced a 93 Ngwe reduction of petroleum, while 2 kwacha 97 Ngwe for diesel. Petrol will now sell at 27 kwacha 59 Ngwe, while diesel at 26 kwacha 28 Ngwe.
Oil prices and the change in the transportation mode for low sulfur diesel, despite the depreciation of the kwacha against the United States dollar, have resulted in a downward adjustment in the price of petrol and diesel. Meanwhile, the prices of kerosene and Jet A1 have been maintained because they move by less than 2.5% of the wholesale price figure that.
The new fuel pump price announced by ERB has, however, not been appreciated by some motorists in Lusaka, who claims no difference can be seen.
Ndrama yamene wanachaja poikira mukazwanga saka mbiri vazaikira maybe 3 kwacha 4 kwacha 5 kwacha but reduction ikabwera ipo pese kati vafaka wachusa ka 1 kwacha ka 50 Ngwe masi panga sense is better ngati vafuna ngati vaikira ko 3 kwacha pochosa wachusa ko 5 kwacha paja izooneka nayo weka bokoza kwamba taboma yatu isevenza mwamwene tizivira kuti ati vintu vonse funa kunkhala bwino my price bukaikonga momene vinaliri na price imene yankhalapo by now na momene yendera itamangira vasiyana kutali maningi. Otherwise, monga ife stingakwanise mona mataxi ensevenza na heavy muntu okamchaja ndrama kuti peto inadura savomera akana azafuna mtengo uja ung'ono uja then kuti uibalance economy nayo pezemo kanonga sale na keve na vakuti usakire chakudya munga mweni vinambo vutira ndemwe intipezera ife mayusi vavuta so pamene apo ngapemba kuti boma itiganzireko.
Motorists whose vehicle use petrol states that the 93 Ngwe reduction by government is a mockery.
In fact, we are complaining the government should at least reduce so that at least we feel better as Zambians. And the other issue that I want to add on is concerning RATSA. Yes, RATSA, I think RATSA is becoming an impact whereby we are being forced to go to court without being charged, without knowing our charges, then we are only taking to court. From there, we'll be only told us pay 900. For what? Pay 600 or pay 3,000. So we don't understand. As some other regime back, we usually face some challenges whereby when it comes to identity or maybe road tax.
With no clear roadmap on how to get out of the current challenge, a deep sense of uncertainty looms over the country. Government and its citizens hope and pray that at the end to a conflict dragging 1,000 miles away will bring down fuel price at home. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
A couple from Lusaka's Kabanana compound is desperately seeking assistance after facing various challenges in raising their 7-year-old daughter living with cerebral palsy. In an interview with Camnet News, Masozi Banda and her husband, who are both unemployed, say they are living in stress watching their daughter suffer due to the damage caused to her brain during the birthing process. The couple is now appealing for medical and financial assistance to enable them enroll their daughter in school where she can learn personal independence and get assistance to develop social skills. More in this report.
Life has not been easy for this couple of Lusaka's Kabanana compound raising a child with cerebral palsy. Masozi Banda and her husband Thomas Mutonga have 4 children. They are both unemployed and states they are living in stress watching their younger daughter Faith Mutonga, aged 7 years old, suffer due to the damage caused to her brain during the birthing process. The couple did their best to control their emotions as they explained to Camnet News the challenge that comes with caring for a child diagnosed with cerebral palsy.
So pobadwa paja napeza kuti vanachitoforcing then anatoka kwanja ya left then anachedwa kulira. So mchedwa kulira naenda ku hospital kwendo chita complain vanakamba ta mwamene achitira so ikwanja izankhala koyovuta kuti kankhale nomo buno chukwa mavenzi yankhala wiki pamene paja pobadwa then na ku brain sazankhala nomo monga banzake na kukula sazambokula monga mwamene anakulira banzake wonse. So ndiye ma challenges yanapezeka kuli huyu. And for sure pamwana manja na 7 years and some months saenda kukamba ngati muntu wina ngusanga vimveri vomvera isoro vinangu vitipita bate vinangu timamvera.
The couple knows too well their daughter's condition has no cure, and all effort to see her live with a great autonomy and independence has been quite a challenge. They are now appealing for medical and financial assistance to enable them enroll their daughter in a special school where she can learn personal independence and get assistance to develop social skills.
Ninavuta yauti sinisebenza, so nifuna ati mwana mwanga ngapunzile but niswawa mumpelekela ku school. Pamene alile apasaenda but ana 7 years mwana. Vama niuza kulituma mandantu wetu mabwera wauti ai mwana muzibwera naye ku school but ipezeka tikapezekera kutali so apa maliko enango anatuza ati nezimpeleka ku Foxdale but moendera na eve ni masowa moendera na eve nilibendrama sinisebenza but challenge ni amene so even baby woka inashita weldingira neka chabena nimpangire cheyo chita weldinga neka.
Cerebral palsy is a group of disorder that affects movement and muscle tones or posture. It is caused by damage that occurs to the immature, developing brain most often before birth. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
The National Water Supply and Sanitation, NWASCO, has underscored the need to come up with a specific fund aimed at steering rural water supply and sanitation provision in the country. NWASCO Chief Inspector Peter Mtale says NWASCO has already developed policies and systems to regulate rural water supply and sanitation, but limited resources undermine the objective. He has, however, told Camnet News that his organization is working with the Ministry of Water and Sanitation in order to address the problem. Here's a report.
Since the country's water sector reforms of the 1990s, water supply and sanitation service provision has been focused more on the urban population. This has resulted in service provision in the rural population lagging behind despite the rural population accounting for about 58% of the national population. In 2018, the National Water Supply and Sanitation Council, NWASCO, developed a framework for the provision and regulation of rural water supply and sanitation. This led to commercial utilities operating licenses being amended to include rural areas in line with the 2019-2030 National Rural Water Supply and Sanitation Program. Rural areas are vast, hence it is obvious that all the 11 water utilities in the country are struggling to adequately provide services. According to the 2018 Zambia Demographic Health Survey, 70% of households in rural areas took less than 30 minutes to obtain drinking water. And this challenge is still prevalent in several parts of Zambia, including rural parts of Lusaka province, such as Chongwe district.
So mazi kutia kankhala yambiri at least mungazi caring eko. Manje peza ati mazi yachepa. Yativuta. Kocho samazi ni kutali.
WaterAid Zambia Technical Manager Adamson Sakala tells Camnet TV News that utilities must be adequately funded in order to make rural water supply and sanitation provision a reality.
We expect that there will be technical support, skills will improve to sustain rural water, and there will be more financing to improve rural water supply. So the thing that we need is to ensure that we fund our utilities adequately for them to undertake this. You cannot give a mandate and you do not give the financing.
NWASCO Chief Inspector Peter Mtale explains that they have developed tools and systems to provide and regulate rural water supply and sanitation, but observes that a major stumbling block is limited resources.
So what we need is a fund, which is a special purpose vehicle to drive these commercial activities into rural areas. We did the same thing with the payable areas. Previously, commercial activities never used to go into the payable areas. But because we had a fund called Commercial Trust Fund, we had to push these commercial activities to go into payable areas. So we also need resources. Regardless of the mode that we want to use to provide services in the rural areas, we need funds. You know, we cannot see use in the current form the way they are. They can move with their resources into rural areas. Now we need a fund. And I know we are working together with the government to come up with a fund. We are hoping that this fund will drive us there.
Mike Imposha is the minister responsible for water and sanitation in the country.
Emphasizing on PPPs. So we want to attract people, developers, financiers who want to come and partner with us in the water sector to go into the PP arrangements. In order to achieve that, we must make the water sector, the utility companies, very attractive.
The Vision 2030 envisages the provision of secure access to safe, potable water sources and improved sanitation facilities to 100% of the population in both urban and rural areas and 90% access to self-sanitation. But to achieve this, the Zambian government must double its efforts. Patrick Soko, Camnet News.
The opposition leadership movement has cautioned the United Party for National Development, UPND, against signing a memorandum of understanding in dark corners that may compromise the country's sovereignty. Addressing the media Saturday, party president Dr. Richard Silumbe alleges that the UPND administration has continued to be a puppet of the West. Dr. Silumbe says no one should derive happiness in the U.S. government giving Zambia peanuts to fight corruption in exchange for the country's mineral resources. More in this report.
The recent Democratic Summit co-hosted by the United States in Lusaka has been questioned by the opposition political parties, with some claiming nothing tangible can be seen from that. Friday, the 31st of March 2023, the United States government injected $16 million to Zambia for it to fight corruption. The Leadership Movement Party, however, charges that the United Party for National Development administration must be ashamed for celebrating the said aid. Addressing the media Saturday, the party president, Dr. Richard Silumbe, alleges that Zambia has turned into a begging country. The opposition leaders also cautioned the UPND administration against signing memorandums of understanding in dark corners that may compromise the country.
We are very ashamed as leadership movement to see a government that celebrates being given a few coins at the expense of massive production that we need to be undertaking as a country. When we put up all those media advertisements that we have been given 33 million to fight corruption, we have been given this much to do this, we should be ashamed of ourselves as a people, because that does not build a country. It makes a country a begging country, a country that cannot produce, a country that is waiting for someone to fling a coin on its palms. That is a very bad precedence. We want a government that pursues policies of development.
Meanwhile, the party has reminded the current administration of their failure to attain some of its promises, among them that after being sworn into office, the country's economy will improve drastically.
Zambian people, that even us Zambians, the way we are thinking, the disease, the new dawn they are suffering is prioritization. But for us, we have become so lukewarm that anybody who comes and tells us that I'm so in at 10 hours, 14 hours, the dollar comes down. We should be asking questions. You, the electorate, is up where a branch dollar? Pansi panipali development nanga mukakamba fertilizer pa 250 kwacha izabwera bwanji pansi mukabwera hapo. You even look at the aspect of the corruption they've been talking about.
Miriam Kaimba reporting for Camnet TV News.
A historian from the University of Zambia has warned that the opposition, the Patriotic Front, risks going into oblivion for opting to resolve internal wrangles in court. Professor Bizek Piri tells Camnet News that the PF should learn from other political parties who have lost credence for opting to take the court process to resolve their differences. He says the PF must hold elective Congress and elect a leader to make the party relevant in the Zambian political landscape.
One of the things about being good leaders, for me, from my perspective, is that leaders have to be humble in terms of the way in which they deal with issues. There's nothing wrong. For me, it's more humble for leaders to sit down and agree to disagree humbly as members of the same party, so that you don't always want to go and resolve your issues in the courts of law. They are members of the same party. If there are issues that have arisen, why can they sit down behind the closed door and agree on the way forward, which is going to be in the interest of their members, rather than, to say, I want to be seen as the victor. I'm the one who has won and I've defeated so in the courts of law. Yes, the courts of law are going to make decisions, but does that build the party? If anything, in most cases, the result of most of these court arbitrations actually destroy rather than build. And I'm sure our leaders are humble enough to sit down and talk to each other and agree to say, okay, this is the way forward. Let's move on. In any case, I've always said that in any organization, there will be only one leader at a time. What our leaders need to learn and appreciate is to support the one that has been elected by the majority to be the leader at a given time, rather than to go and be saying, no, I'm going to make sure that you fall. That way you can build, if you are always putting each other down. So the PhD syndrome should end. This pull him down, pull her down. That idea is not the best way to manage a political party, and indeed even to manage a country.
Central Province Minister Credo Nanjua has observed that tackling manganese poisoning will require a comprehensive approach, suspecting that the problem might be bigger than it is portrayed. Last month, 28 employees of Southern Africa Ferro Alloys Limited, SAFAO, in Central Province were diagnosed with manganese poisoning. And Mr. Nanjua tells Camnet News that there are many districts which are mining manganese in the province, hence the need to get to the bottom of the matter. He says the provincial administration is working with line ministries such as the Ministry of Health to resolve the matter.
But what has come out now is another worrying situation for the provincial administration, that if we have another issue of manganese pollution in the province, is a serious source of concern, bearing in mind that there are several districts lead is in Kawe, but manganese is in over 4-5 districts. We have got manganese in Chitambo, Serenje, Mukushi, Luano, Kapiri, and Kawe itself, and part of Chisamba. So if that be another pollution, then the province is really concerned, but we are working tirelessly to see to it that the source of this challenge is identified and mitigation measures are put in place, working in liaison with the Ministry of Health and the whole cabinet, I should think, because it's an issue that really needs the attention of the whole cabinet.
Northern Province Commanding Officer Gloria Mulele says 8 bodies from the Chilubi boat accident have been retrieved from Lake BANGWEULE. Ms. Mulele says the search for other missing persons has continued. Meanwhile, the government has also engaged the Marine Unit of the Zambia Army to help in the search for the missing persons. He added that relevant wings of government have also been engaged to see how best the tragedy will be handled. And Chilubi District Administrative Officer Diodon Lupasha says the number of people on the boat has now been established to be 44 people. He says the bodies that have been retrieved will be put in a central place and later taken to either Samfia or Mansa mortuary. Yesterday, a boat accident on Lake BANGWEULE caused the drowning of about 10 people, who are youths from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The youths from Kashitu SDA Church were traveling from Muchinshi to Chishi Island when the accident happened. Meanwhile, President Hakainde Hichilema has learned with deep shock and sadness the accident involving the superboat reportedly carrying 44 Seventh-day Adventist Church choir members, which capsized on Lake BANGWEULE in Luapula Province, leaving about 16 people missing. Reports indicate that the incident occurred on Lake BANGWEULE between Chilubi and Chishi Islands, where 28 people were immediately rescued while 16 went missing. President Hichilema says the pain of losing so many lives of young people in a single tragedy of this magnitude is unbearable. The President has told the Vice President to provide the required transport and logistical support to the search and rescue team to ensure that the missing bodies are retrieved. The Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit in the Office of the Vice President is coordinating the search and rescue operation and retrieval of the missing bodies. The Marines have since been deployed to conduct the search and rescue operation as well as the retrieval of the missing bodies on the lake with the help of the community. The government will provide coffins, food and other logistical support to the funeral houses to ease the burden on the church and the bereaved families. You're watching Camnet Television Main News. We'll take a break. Join us for more news after the break.
In our quest to save nations and develop Africa, Savenda is investing in the agriculture sector so as to produce supply for both local and international markets. Housing over 12,000 pullets that are nurtured and fed with our locally made stock feed that comes from our own locally grown maize and soya beans, all processed from our recently installed milling and mixing plant. Our over 95,000 layers have an output capacity of over 1,500 trays of fresh eggs per day that are carefully selected and packaged for all the leading stores and supermarkets nationwide. Our greenhouses are fitted with the latest irrigation system, and the seedlings are nurtured to ensure only healthy plants reach the fields. With our deliberate planting schedule, we are better placed to supply constantly without interruption, thus reliable. Savenda Farms is also changing lives of its dedicated workforce drawn from the local community and beyond. So the next time you think fresh and green, think Savenda Farms.
Your skin is the biggest muscle in your body. That's why we make sure that Oracle is #1 when it comes to taking care of your precious skin. Oracle Pure Petroleum Jelly and Glycerin soothes, moisturizes and keeps your skin perfect. Oracle Pure Petroleum products for that perfect skin.
Coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet Television, call the numbers on your screen. Television, bringing to your screens fair news, impassioned news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Television, not just another channel.
Welcome back. We'll continue with the news. The U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has called on business and philanthropic leaders to make direct investments and social impact commitments in support of the Digital Transformation with Africa DTA initiative that was launched by U.S. President Joe Biden at the Africa Leaders Summit last year. Ms. Harris explained that this is in an effort to promote digital inclusion, especially among women and the youths across the African continent. Ms. Harris stressed the need to explore ways towards the expansion of access to digital services, which will drive the development across sectors and demographics. Speaking when she met business and philanthropic leaders in Lusaka today, the American Vice President envisions African ideas and innovation to be the ones shaping the future of the world. She thus reiterated the need to invest in African ingenuity and creativity, which will unlock incredible economic growth and opportunities. Ms. Harris observed that even when Africa has continued growth in digital infrastructure, with some places leading the world in digital solutions, there remains a gap with many lagging behind. Zambia Alliance for Tobacco Control, ZATC, says the smoking of shisha is as bad as smoking a cigarette. In an interview, ZATC Secretary General Dr. Teddy Mulenga disputed the perception that tobacco in shisha is flavored and passes through water before consumption. He explains that shisha contains carcinogen and nicotine, adding that a regular shisha smoker is at risk of similar health problems faced by cigarette smokers. He notes the need to conduct more public sensitization, especially in higher learning institutions where the use of shisha is rampant. He says the volume of smoke in an hour long shisha session is estimated to be equivalent to smoking between 100 and 200 cigarettes.
In Zambia is that our young people, our young women and young men are thinking that taking shisha is classy, but it carries more dosage of nicotine than even that is contained in a cigarette. So we would like to appeal to our young people and women to realize that 100 cigarettes at once taken is an equivalent of 1 hour of shisha. So 1 hour of shisha translates to you taking 5 packets of 20 cigarettes. That's 100 cigarettes in one go. So it's actually very dangerous as related to its health effects. Our wish as the Tobacco Alliance is Zambia Alliance for Tobacco Control is to see the ban on the importation of the equipment for shisha. We are spending dollars on them while we are harming our young people. And we also would wish to see it completely banned at the end of the day. That is what we are advocating for.
The Carter Center and the Embassy of Finland and Ireland have stressed the need for continuous exchange of good practices towards strengthening democracies among countries. And the Swedish government says it believes that democratic, inclusive and equal society gives everyone the best opportunities to achieve their full potential, to contribute and participate in developing communities. Swedish Government Director General Global Affairs Dag Jolin Denfelt says they remain committed to counter democratic backsliding. Finland's ambassador to Zambia, Sanna Hallinen, says Finland takes deliberate measures to ensure gender focus in programs it supports and implements. Meanwhile, Johan Hallenborg, Sweden's ambassador to Zambia, says they have been giving support to civil society organizations to spearhead inclusion in governance. They made the remarks at the Democracy Summit side media briefing on securing the seat at the table for women, youth and persons with disabilities as influencers and decision makers.
For me, they are fully very healthy. But if they would have had any disabilities, there would have been mechanisms to support them to get into society. And this is, and you know, as the Finnish ambassador said, we are by no means perfect. We are still having this struggle today. We are not a totally equal society in Sweden yet, or in Scandinavia. But we are continuing on a daily basis. We try to improve the imperfections that inevitably exist, and everywhere. And thus, with the same spirit, we want to engage and cooperate with partner countries. And Zambia being one of the country that was, in our view, has achieved enormous things since national liberation from colonialism.
If we look at Sweden's support right now in this area of democracy support, there are a number of quite broad interventions and support programs. One of them is through a coalition of partners led by the UN, and that one was set up before the elections in 2021, and it's a broad program, where inclusion in democracy is one of the key pillars. Support to and through civil society is another one, and where we work with partners continuously, and that's a broad coalition. Then we have direct support into locally based organizations here. We are not in a position to have many small grants, but we do provide quite substantive grants to bigger organizations who then in turn can channel into grassroots organizations.
Medium-sized companies supporting Zambia's economic growth, particularly in the areas where people, the most vulnerable, work in. So to help Zambia's economy grow and to produce jobs and to get livelihoods, particularly for the most vulnerable people in Zambia. So hopefully through that as well, people also get opportunities to become politically active, to be able to campaign. For women, 80% of the companies that we've been supporting are companies led by women. So we have a very good gender focus in our program.
This is Camnet Television Main News. Join us for international and sports news after the break.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet Television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet Television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
We continue with our news, and now in international news, the after effects of Cyclone Freddy continue to affect Mozambicans. The cyclones displaced some 184,000 people as the country faces its worst cholera outbreak in more than a decade. Now, over 1 million people face the possibility of contracting cholera, polio or COVID-19, the World Health Organization warned on Friday. Here's a roundup of international news for more.
The after effects of Cyclone Freddy continue to affect Mozambicans. The cyclones displaced an estimated 184,000 people as the country faces its worst cholera outbreak in more than a decade. Now over 1 million people face the possibility of contracting cholera, polio, COVID-19, the World Health Organization warned Friday.
While the cholera outbreaks regularly occur in Mozambique between October and April of every year, with more than 21,000 cases currently and 95 deaths, this is the largest outbreak in the last 20 years. For example, Manica province bordering Zimbabwe had not seen a case of cholera in the last 15 years.
Cyclone Freddy damaged many health facilities mid-March. Speaking from Maputo, the WHO representative for Mozambique detailed the fatality rate and commended the work of health professionals.
Luckily, the case fatality rate in the cholera treatment center is below the threshold of 1%, which means we are able to save lives. And I really have to acknowledge the wonderful work that the Ministry of Health is doing, deploying people that at the same time need to look after their families and meanwhile treating people.
8 of the country's 11 provinces have been affected as cases continue to rise. The first vaccination campaign was launched in February. A new one kicked off Thursday in the eastern city of Kiliman, targeting 410,000 people. Commodity prices continue to drain the pockets of Kenyans. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics unveiled Friday the annual inflation rate in March. At 9.2%, the overall year-on-year inflation rate, as measured by the Consumer Price Index, remained unchanged from February. The Housing, Water, Electricity, Gas and Other Fuels Index, however, increased between February 2023 and March 2023. The Transport Index also went up by 0.3% during that period. Kenyans are suffering from surging prices as well as a sharp drop in the local shilling against the US dollar and a drought that has left millions unable to properly feed themselves. During the election campaign, the president portrayed himself as champion of the downtrodden and vowed to improve the lot of ordinary Kenyans. Hundreds took to the streets in recent days as they wanted him to act by his words. The opposition launched a campaign of nationwide protests that kicked off on March 20th.
Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso looks increasingly isolated as he begins the latest fight for his political life. He surrounded himself with supporters and his wife as he rejected the second impeachment trial against him in less than a year. This time for allegedly embezzling public funds. He insisted he is a victim of a conspiracy against him.
I am outraged by this attack on my integrity, my reputation, and also that of our home. With my hand on my heart, Ecuadorians, I reiterate to you, I am innocent.
This week, the country's constitutional court gave the go-ahead for the impeachment proceedings against the conservative former banker. The court accuses him of allowing corruption in the country's state oil companies. And it comes as Lasso struggled to tackle a surge in violent crime and worsening economic problems. He now faces a vote in a hostile Congress and abysmal approval ratings. Even conservative observers in the country say it has become increasingly hard for any political sector to defend him.
This impeachment trial is happening after Lasso suffered heavy defeats in local elections and in a referendum last month. Among a worsening security crisis, there is also a crisis in the health system. And I think the generalized discontent might play a role in pushing legislators to make a political decision more than a simple judicial one.
The National Assembly has up to 45 days to investigate the charges. Ousting Lasso will require 92 of the Assembly's 137 votes. Other political experts fear the removal could impact Ecuador's already weak institutions, but insist the president has only himself to blame.
Let's look at some sports news now. Now, sports news tonight. Gabriel Jesus scored his first Arsenal goal since October as the Gunners restored their 8-point lead at the top of the Premier League with a comfortable win over Leeds. Second-place Manchester City's victory at home to Liverpool on Saturday lunchtime had cut the gap to 5 points, but Jesus' first-half penalty awarded for Luke Ayling's mistimed challenge on the Brazilian put Mikel Arteta's side in front just after the half-hour mark. Leeds had created the better opportunities in the opening half of the contest, with Rasmus Christensen, Crescencio Somerville and Jack Harrison all testing homekeeper Aaron Ramsdale. But they fell further behind 2 minutes into the second half when Ben White converted Gabriel Martinelli's low cross via the underside of the crossbar. Arsenal dominated from that moment on, and Jesus recalled to the side in place of Bukayo Saka made it 3-0 with a clinical first-time finish from Leandro Trossard's drilled cross. Rasmus Christensen pulled a goal back for Leeds via a heavy deflection off Alexander Zinchenko, but Granit Xhaka's late header from Martin Odegaard's delivery completed the scoring with 6 minutes remaining. The defeat leaves Javi Gracia's team hovering a point above the relegation zone with 10 games of the campaign left to play. That note brings us to the end of the news, but before we go, the headlines once again. 8 bodies from Lake BANGWEULE boat accident retrieved. PF risks going into oblivion for opting to resolve internal wrangles through the court. Motorists describe the fuel price reduction as a mockery. In international news, Mozambique faces worst cholera outbreak in over a decade after Cyclone FREDDY. In sports news, Jesus scores twice as English Premier League leaders Arsenal beat Leeds. Our current verse of the day is coming from John 3 verse 17. God sent his Son into the world not to judge the world, but to serve the world through him. Thank you again for watching Camnet Television News. My name is Jeffrey Ziambo. Bye-bye.